Like, comment, and subscribe.
Our inheritance is turned to strangers, and our houses to aliens. We are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows. We are drunk in our water for money, and our wood is sold unto us. Our necks are under persecution. We labor and have no rest. We have given our hand to the Maswayan and to the Assyrian to be satisfied with bread. Our fathers have seen and are not, and we are born their iniquity.
All right, Mashpaka, let me give it a little rest real quick. I'm gonna go and wait for y'all to come in, and I got something to play for y'all while I'm waiting. All right, Shalom. Just got to call in. Want to thank y'all for coming today. Got a book reading that I want to do with y'all today. It's about Brother Olado Aquino. I started reading on it a while back, and then I never got to finish reading, so I'm finna go ahead and start up, fam. Alright, so here we go. Now, I don't remember exactly where we stopped. I saved it and I had to restart my computer, so I don't know where we last left off. Let me look and see if I see a sign. No, I don't see one, so I think we stopped at chapter 2. Let me go up at the top. And this is about Ola Uda Aquino. Alright. So I'm gonna start at chapter 2. To take particular plans to form my mind, I was trained up from my earliest years in the art of war. My daily exercise was shooting and throwing javelins, and my mother adorned me with emblems after the manner of our greatest warriors. In this way I grew up till I had turned the age of 11. And when an end was put to my happiness in the following manner. Generally, when the grown people in the neighborhood were gone far in the fields to labor, the children assembled themselves together at some neighboring premises to play. And commonly Some of us used to get up a tree to look out for an assailant, a kidnapper, or a kidnapper that might come upon us, for they sometimes took those opponents of our parents' absence to attack and carry off as many as they could seize. One day, as I was watching at the top of a tree in our yard, I saw one of those people come into the yard of our next neighbor but one to kidnap, there being many stout young people in it. Immediately on this, I gave the alarm of the rogue, and he was surrounded by the stoutest of them, who entangled him with cords so that he could not escape, till some of the grown people came and secured him. But alas, ere long it was my fate to be thus attacked and to be carried off, when none of the grown people were nigh. One day, when all our people were gone out to their works as usual, and only I and my sister were left to mind the house, two men, a woman, got over our walls, and in a moment seized us both, and without giving us time to cry out or make resistance, they stopped our mouths and ran off with us into the nearest wood. This is called kidnapping, where they tied our hands and continued to carry us far as they could till night came, on when we reached a small house where the robbers halted for refreshment and spent the night. We were then unbound, but unable to take any food, and being quite overpowered by fatigue and grief, our only relief was some sleep, which allayed our misfortune for a short time. The next morning, we left the house and continued traveling all day. For a long time, we had kept the woods, but at last we came into a road which I believe I knew. I had now some hopes of being delivered, for we had advanced but a little way before I discovered some people at a distance. Now, right here, why didn't the other people fight for Wydah and his sister like his tribe was fighting for Wydah and his sister? Think about it. And he came from the kingdom of Judah, Wydah. And we will get into that if we have to. On which I began to cry out for their assistance. And when I say Wydah, Lamb, when I say these words, that is denominations of the name of our Father. And it's not no denomination like no religion, because our names have been changed. It's not our fault in this generation. It's those people who did it. They changed our fathers in them names. For we had advanced but a little way before I discovered some people at a distance, on which I began to cry out for their assistance. But my cries had no other effect, so nobody there listened to them. Nobody helped them like the people was helping each other in the village. Then, to make them tie me faster and stop my mouth, then they put me into a large sack. This is called kidnapping. They also stopped my sister's mouth and tied her hands. In this manner, we proceeded till we were out of sight of these people. When we sent to rest the following night, they offered us. So this is chapter 2. So let me go down to here. And I skipped that part, my bad. So I leave the book in there and I just read this part. So I skipped that part and I'm not going back over that. So I do this. I hope the reader will not think I have trespassed on this patience and intruding myself to him and introducing myself to him with some account of the manners and customs of my country. They had been implanted in me with great care and made an impression on my mind which time could not erase, which all the adversity and variety of fortune I have since experienced serve only to rivet and record. For whether the love of one country be real or imaginary, or a lesson of reason, or instinct of nature, I still look back with pleasure on the first scenes of my life, though that pleasure had been for the most part mingled with sorrow. I have already acquainted the reader with the time and place of my birth. My father, besides many slaves, had a numerous family. My father, beside many slaves, had a numerous family, of which 7 lived to grow up, including myself and sister, who was the only daughter, as I was the youngest of the sons. I became, of course, the greatest favorite with my mother, and was always with her. All right. So I'm going to do it right this time. Page 48. Some visuals, but we refused it. And the only comfort, so let me go up here so we can catch up. When we went to rest the following night, they offered us some visuals, but we refused it. And the only now look at this story right here and think about Yawasop being sold into Masrium. Look at this story right here and look at all the troubles that Joseph went through with when he was being sold into Egypt by Africans. Although they were the seed of Shem, by dark-skinned race of people that sold Joseph to the Masrium. Shalom, Sister Positive Reinforcement. Some visuals, but we refused it. And the only comfort we had was in being in one of another's arms all that night and bathing each other with our tears. But alas, we were soon deprived of even the small comfort of weeping together. The next day proved a day of great sorrow than I had yet experienced, for my sister and I were then separated. You know how DCF separate children? While we lay clasped in each other's arms. It was in vain that we besought them not to part us. She was torn from me and immediately carried away. This is our story. All of us have this story. If you over here on this west side of America, if you're in America and you're in the Caribbean island, look at this. Not to us. To us, she was torn from me and immediately carried away. While I was left in a state of distraction, not to be described, I cried and grieved continually, and for several days did not eat anything but what they forced into my mouth. There's a story of a man where we grew up at. My grandmother, he used to rent out a room. His family, his father and his mother, they used to rent out a room over there. And my grandmother told me, her name is Catherine. My grandmother told me that she's still living. My grandmother told me that the man, he was a boy at that time, used to cry all night long until he went deaf. He used to scream and cry all night long. He went deaf and nobody was in there. So they kind of like adopted him, and they raised him up and took care of him. They didn't throw the boy out on the street. So my grandmother them let him stay on the other side, and they had the other side, and that was my grandmother's place that the landlord, after the landlord died, they were able to recover the title deeds or whatever and keep the house. But now today they don't. So this is what I'm telling you. Our people loved each other. All right. And there was people in our community, we saw each other as blood kindred. We didn't see each other as some strange person next door. That was really kinfolk. Sister William, we saw her as our auntie. Mother Mattie Lies, that was our auntie. That's why when you see Negroes down here in the South, we call each other, we call the elderly men that ain't our daddy, we call them aunt. Or we call them the sisters that's older than us, that she deserve respect, we call her auntie or ma'am or sir. Respect. I cried and grieved continually, and for several days, because we showed and learned how to respect each other from the slave master. And for several days did not eat anything but what they forced in my mouth. At length, now can you imagine this was going on in 2025, and ABC News was reporting this? Do you know how many helicopters and sheriffs and everything should be looking for this child to return him back to his family? They done smuggled him into America. Well, not what we call America today, but let's go on and read. At length, after many days traveling, during which I had often changed masters, I got into the hands of the chieftain of the chief. See, this is the chieftain. I got into the hands of the chieftain who was selling the children. You read it in the history. King Hafan. I got into the hands of the chieftain, and it was the people of the Fun people, and a lot of people was practicing witchcraft, and they had the women, the all women soldiers and all that. They were slave catching, and this was the destroying the kingdom of Wydah, as we read before. And if you would like for me to brief over that again before I get off here, please put it inside of the chat, and I will do that if y'all were willing. I got it to the hands of the chieftain in a very pleasant country. This man had 2 wives and some children. So this man had 2 wives and some children. And they all used me extremely well, and did all they could do to comfort me, particularly the first wife, who was something like my mother. The first wife who was something like my mother. Look at what Ola Uda Aquino is saying. These people that he didn't, these is not his, that's not his mama and his daddy. He said, because this will show you who these people is. When you calling people, you say brother or sister or elder or auntie, people that don't come from your nearest of kin, but we call each other cuz or bruh. That's what we do, and other people do it and cosplay it and make buku loads of money out of our mannerisms. All right, whether they good or bad. Comfort me, particularly the first wife, who was something like my mother. Although this is a great deep study inside of Wydah, the kingdom of Judah. Although I was a great many days journeying from my father's house, yet these people spoke exactly the same language with us. Look, they spoke the same language. They spoke the same language. This first master of mine, and it was a chieftain, this first master of mine, as I may call him, was a smith, and my principal employment was working his bellows. So Wydah learned about smith. He knew these trades. He wasn't taught this by no slave master on no plantation, like they say in some of these records. When they was freed, the slaves learned from the slave masters how to build and do all this. Look, this first master of mine, as I may call him, he was working with him. He was employed. Not like in America, how they say that Africans was doing. No, Africans wasn't doing it like them. This first master of mine, as I may call him, as a smith, and my principal employment was working his bellows, which were the same kind as I had been in my vicinity. They were in some respect not unlike the stoves here in Gentleman's Kitchen. So he's explaining to them, were covered over to us as well, was covered over with leather, and in the middle of the leather a stick was fixed. And he knew, Wydah knew that it was against the law for us to learn how to read. So perhaps he was hoping that one day his blood kindred and his tribemen that's in these countries scattered would be able to read what he said one day. He knew that they was changing people's names. And a person stood up and worked it in the same manner as is done to pump water out of a cask with a hand pump. I believe it was gold he worked, for it was a lovely bright yellow color that was worn by the women on their wrists and ankles. So look, he's saying that the women, and was worn by the women on their wrists and ankles. So a gold color, yellow color. So he's telling you the color of the gold of the jewelry that they wore. All right. I believe it was gold. So they wasn't naked with picking fleas off each other and swinging on no tree with no banana in their mouth, like they said. I believe it was gold he worked, for it was of a lovely bright yellow color and was worn by the women on their wrists and ankles. So a lot of our sisters till this day will wear gold, yellow gold on their wrists and ankles. And a lot of y'all do that and probably don't even know where it come from. Some things you can't beat out of a people. I was there, I suppose, about a month, and they at last used to trust me some little distance from the house. So he from the tribe of Judah, from the kingdom of Judah, my bad. This liberty I use in embracing every opportunity to inquire the way to my own home. So he said he's looking at the same things that we try to do, that people try to block and say we being racist, by looking at what color of the jewelry. So you say color right there, and people get mad when you talk about color, talking about the jewelry and stuff, and people say they putting on their jeans and stuff and say we was already in America. And they came to America. They came to their city in a Cadillac and all that stuff, what they mockingly say against their own self. I was there, I suppose, about a month, and they at last used to trust me some little distance from the house. This liberty I use in embracing every opportunity to inquire the way to my own home. Scammer called, inquire the way to my own home. And I also sometimes, for the same purpose, went with the maidens in the cool of the evenings to bring pitchers of water from the springs for the use of the house. I had also remarked where the sun rose in the morning. Why was he looking to the east, where the sun rose in the morning and set in the evening, as I had traveled along? And I had observed that my father's house was towards the rising of the sun. That my father's house was towards the rising of the sun. So they knew how to tell directions by looking at the sun, the moon, and the stars. I therefore determined to seize the, and look, this child is 12 years old, so this must have been coming. I therefore determined to seize the first opportunity of making my escape and to shape my course for that chapter, for that quarter. For I was quite oppressed and weighed down by grief after my mother and friends and my love of liberty, my love of freedom, ever great. So he didn't feel free. He didn't come over here on first class seats with a ticket. Ever great was strengthened by the more mortifying circumstances of not daring to eat with the freeborn children. So he wasn't eating with the freeborn children. So it was people in Africa that was freeborn, people that was not the ones to be caught, not the ones to be tied up like an animal, like an old ox. It was freeborn children, and it was children, and it was people that was supposed to be born to be a slave. Although I was mostly their companion, so even though he was their friends, but he wasn't born in the same manner as them. They were born to be free. They were born to be freeborn children, and they had captives to go out and catch them. And I don't think that the people of the freeborn children will be going out capturing their own children and putting them on those slave ships. While I was projecting, because some people say that they just went over there and the Africans, then they just grab any random one, they didn't care. But we looking at this right here, strategists. We read about the Ottoman Empire, how they were set up strategically, militarily. We read about in the history of the kingdom of Judah, how it was strategically destroyed, and it was the one that was attacked. That kingdom was destroyed. While I was projecting my escape, one day an unlucky event happened, which quite discounted my pain. Now, why do some of us believe in luck? Not saying that it's something that we should be doing, but look at what Wydah Aquino is writing about, what he talking about luck. And put an end to my hopes. I used to be sometimes employed in assisting an elderly slave to cook and take care. So you remember, before I even go any further, do you remember that they said that some of our people was enslaved in Africa and the rest of us were being shipped across the water? Remember that. Now that's page 50. Let's go up to here. This is page 2. Chapter 2, this is 49. The poultry. And one morning, while I was feeding some chickens, they had chickens over there. So they didn't learn how to eat chicken in America. While I was feeding some chickens, this tribe that eat chicken, I happened to toss a small pebble at one of them, which hit it on the middle and directly killed it. So he knew how to kill chickens. He knew how to throw a pebble and hit it in the middle of his neck. That's how you kill him. And it directly killed him. The old slave, having my Uncle Lemon knew how to throw an axe. He taught himself how to throw it, I believe. The old slave, having soon after missed the chicken, inquired after it, and on my relating the accident, for I told her the truth, for my mother would never suffer me to tell a lie. Look, he said that his mama taught him not to tell a lie. That's the commandment. Thou shalt not lie. She flew into a violent passion. Did they come down there and teach our people? Did they come down there and teach our people about Allahayim? Did they come down there and teach our people about Yahweh or Yahushua? For my mother would never suffer me to tell a lie. She flew into a violent passion and threatened that I should suffer for it. And my master being out, she immediately went and told her mistress that what I had done. So look, this elderly man was a slave, but this woman was teaching her son to even respect the slave. This elderly woman was teaching her son to respect the slave and not to lie to him. My master being out, she immediately went and told her mistress what I had done. So the mama went out and told the mistress what she did. She told on her. You know how when you do something wrong, when you did something wrong back then, and the old woman or the old man are going to tell on you? You know, Mr. and Mrs. Nosy, what we used to call them when we was little? She immediately went and told her mistress what I had done. This alarmed me very much, and I expected an instant flogging, an instant beating, which to me was uncommonly dreadful. So mama and daddy would tell, but look, it's the mama tearing him up. How many of y'all ever got tore up by mama? Please don't put it in the chat, because they try to make it against the law back then for your mother and father to spank you. For I had seldom been beaten at home, so he wasn't that bad. But somebody look at this and say, see, he wasn't beaten that much at home, so the mama let him get away with stuff. No, when a Negro say I ain't get a lot of whippings, that means he wasn't acting bad all the time. But people don't understand it, and they can create and form their own doctrines. But you and I know, brother and sister, know that if you acting bad, mama and daddy gonna tear you up. That's why he was scared. I therefore resolved to fly, to run. See? Why he put fly? Because he understood what the old English meant. When you read inside the Apocrypha and it's saying they flew away, and some people read that and say, look, it's talking about people flying and all that. No, this means run. To fly, to run. And accordingly I ran. Look, so he telling you what fly mean. And accordingly I ran. So if you reading the old English Bible and they got the Apocrypha in there and all that, and you reading the book of Ezra and they say something about fly, you want to understand what some of this mean, read some, go and read some of what your what the elders had wrote back then during slavery, that snuck and wrote, or was given a privilege by a slave master that could have got punished for teaching them. And accordingly I ran into a thicket that was hard by and hid myself in the bushes. Soon afterwards, my mistress and the slave returned, and not seeing me, they searched all the house, but not finding me. Now, if you tell a child it's because you acted bad, that's why you over here. No, see, this right here was a childish thing that happened. When they say that y'all owed us debt, we don't owe them nothing. We owe it to y'all to repent, not to no slave master. We owe it to y'all to repent, not to no man that done buck your grandfather and your grandmother and them. And I not making answer when they called me. They thought I had run away, and the whole neighborhood was raised in the pursuit of me. So this is why they was chasing him, not to sell him into no slave catcher. They was chasing him because he had did something bad, and mama told the, how we have in the hood back then. When you did something wrong and old Hattie Susie, Hattie may see you out there, and everybody gonna chase you. Anybody ever been chased by the elders and by everybody? I got chased before and got towed up. In that part of the country, as in ours, my daddy used to chase me. I was running like Michael Jackson and hide under the bed. That was my usual hiding spot, but I had to come up out of there. So I had to wait till mama and daddy left out the house and feel like they forgot, and then run out the house. And they would spank me, but they weren't spanking me out of anger because I made sure to hide from them when they were mad. In the part of, and children, don't try this at home. In that part of the country, as in ours, the houses and villages were skirted with woods or shrubberries, and the bushes were so thick that a man could readily conceal himself in them, so as to elude the strictest search. The neighbors continued the whole day looking for me, and several times many of them came within a few yards of the place. So this is why he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Where I lay hid, I expected every moment when I heard a rustle among the trees to be found out. So he knew he did something bad, and this is why he was hiding in the bushes. He wasn't no monkey in no bush like they said with racism and all that. And punished by my master. But they never discovered me. So he said he ran away from the man he was working for, but they never discovered him. Now look at this. Though they were often so near that I even heard their conjunctures as they were looking about for me. And I now learn from them that any attempts to return home would be hopeless. Most of them supposed I had fled towards home, but the distance was so great. So look, he ran away from the person he was working for that his mama had. And so now you got slave catchers looking for him. This baby done got out of safety. He done ran off because he did something bad and didn't want to get a spanking. And he out there hiding. But the distance was so great. So it's slave catchers out there. It's not safe out there, family. Keep this in mind. This baby done ran off. Way so intricate that they thought I could never reach it, and that I should be lost in the woods. When I heard this, I was seized with a violent panic and abandoned myself to despair. Night too began to approach and aggravated all my fears. I had before entertained hopes of getting home and had determined when it should be dark to make the attempt. So he had this woman that he adopted it. So look at all this. But I was now convinced it was fruitless and began to consider that if possible, I could escape all other animals. I could not those of humankind, and that, not knowing the way, I must perish in the woods. Thus was I like the hunted deer. They hunt our footsteps. They hunted our steps. Like they hunted deer, they hunted our steps. A hunter must track the steps of the animal to see which way it went. So like when in hunting, when you hunting deer and you shoot the deer, you hunt his footsteps. You follow where he last went, and you may see blood drip here and blood drip there, and they knew how to hunt. I heard frequently rustling among among the leaves, and being pretty sure they were snakes, I expected every instant to be stung by them. This increased my anguish, and the horror of my situation became now quite insupportable. Now look, why would Yah? This book is a miracle that it was even written, because did you know the harsh punishment for a slave master to teach their slaves to read? Did you know the punishment for a slave to even dare to even learn how to read? And you got some of our brothers and sisters that know how to read at a college graduated level, and they don't even want to read stuff like this. You got a lot of our people that know how to read at a kindergarten level, read better. They know how to read, and they won't even read this. I at length quitted the thicket, very faint and hungry, for I had not eaten or drank anything all the day, and crept to my master's kitchen, from whence I set out at first, which was an open shed, and laid myself down in the ashes. With an ancient wish for death to relieve me from all my pains. I was scarcely awake in the morning when the old woman slave, who was the first up, came to light the fire, and saw in me the fireplace. She was very much surprised to see me, and could scarcely believe her own eyes. She now promised to intercede for me, and went for her master, who soon after came, and having slightly reprimanded me, ordered me to be taken care of and not ill-treated. So I'm going to pause right here and take me a short break, family, to rest my voice. And I'm glad that I made that rest screen, and I'm going to put that for y'all, fam. All right. Please stay tuned. All right. Shalom. I'm going to put it on a rest screen, and I'll be right back with you. I got to rest my voice. I'm back. Thank you for the patience. Thank you so much for y'all patience. All right, so let me go ahead and continue the reading of Elder Wydah Aquino. Soon after this, my master's only daughter and child by his first wife sickened and died. Soon after this, my master's only daughter and child by his first wife sickened and died, which afflicted him so much that for some time he was almost frantic and really would have killed himself had he not been watched and prevented. However, in a short time afterwards, he recovered, and I was again sold. I was now left of the sun rising, so he wasn't carried to the east of the sun rising. He was being taken west. I was now carried to the left of the sun rising, through many dreary wastes and dismal woods, amidst the hideous roaring of wild beasts. The people I was sold to used to carry me very often. When I was tired, either on their shoulders or on their backs, I saw many convenient, well-built sheds along the road, a proper distance to accommodate the merchants and the travelers who lay in those buildings along with their wives, who often accompany them, and they always go well armed. From the time I left my own nation, look, he didn't say that was the same people. You see that? He did not say it was the same people. Thank you, Yahweh, that you allowed this elder to write this down. From the time I left my own nation, he from the Kingdom of Judah family, Wydah, Wydah. From the time I left my own nation, I always found somebody that understood me till I came to the East Coast. The languages of different nations did not totally differ, nor were they so copious as those of the Europeans, particularly the English. They were therefore easily learned. And while I was journeying thus through Africa, I acquired 2 or 3 different tongues. In this manner, I had been traveling for a considerable time, when one evening, to my great surprise, whom should I see brought to the house where I was but my dear sister. So why was his sister there? As soon as she saw me, she gave me a loud shriek and ran into my arms. I was quite overpowered. Neither of us could speak, but for a considerable time clung to each other in a mutual embrace, unable to do anything but cry, but weep. Our meeting affected all who saw us, and indeed, I must acknowledge, in honor of those sable destroyers of human rights, that I never met with any ill treatment or saw any offered to their slaves. except tying them when necessary to keep them from running away. When these people knew we were brother and sister, they indulged us to be together. And the man to whom I suppose we belong lay with us, he in the middle, while she and I held one another by the hand across his breast all night. Thus, for a while, we forgot our misfortunes and the joy of being together. But even this small comfort was soon to have an end. For scarcely had the fatal morning appeared when she was again torn from me forever. I was now more miserable, if possible, than before. So look, why did they catch her and then catch a female from another tribe? And how did Wydah Aquino know that these people was from another tribe, another nation? If they saw everybody as the same one and they was just grabbing any random African, I'm saying this over and over and over again so that we can understand that we are a people for real. We're not no make-believe people that made up who we was and then come to America and say, oh, let's find out what we made up who we was in Africa. These people knew who they was in Africa. They still know who they are. We don't know who we are. Then before the small relief which her presence gave me from pain was gone, and the wretchedness of my situation was redoubled by my anxiety after her fate, and my apprehensions lest her suffering should be greater than mine when I could not be with her to elevate them. Yes, thou dear partner of all my childish sports, though sharer of my joys and sorrows, happy should I have ever esteemed myself to encounter every misery for you, and to procure your freedom by the sacrifice of my own. Sound like Paul, don't it? Though you were early for, and he wasn't taught this by no slave master. He wasn't taught to love his sister by no slave master. Though he wasn't taught to keep this commandment by Christianity. Though you were early forced from my arms. He wasn't taught this by Islam. He wasn't taught this by none of that. This was a part of their culture. This was a part of our culture. This was a part of our natural culture. And when I say Muslim, I'm not talking about he who submits. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the association. I'm not talking about followers of the way. I'm not talking about followers of Christ. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the doctrines that was used to enslave our people. He wasn't taught this by that. Your image has been always revetted in my heart, from which neither time nor fortune have been able to remove it. And let me stop right here, because some people will say some things and leave you to wonder. I'm going to tell you, Yahushua died on the tree, whom the world called Jesus. He rose again on the third day for our sins, so we could be forgiven. And Yahweh sent him, whom the world called God, so that while the thoughts of your suffering have damped my prosperity, they are mingled with adversity and increase its bitterness. And when I say world, I mean this kingdom calls him God, because everybody forced to speak English in this kingdom here. or whatever language that you at. But we know that we have been taught to say God and not say Yahweh. To the heaven which protects the weak from the strong. Wait a minute, what is he praying? The thoughts of your sufferings have dampened my prosperity. They have mingled with adversity and increased its bitterness. To the heaven which protects the weak from the strong, I commit the care of your innocence and virtues, if they have not already received their full reward, and if your youth and delicacies have not long since fallen victims to the violence of the African trader. Wow, so they knew it was African traders over there. Traders, people that traded their people, because they were born to be slaves, but the other ones was born as free children. He knew this at 12 years old when he was in Africa. The pestilential, because the slave master wasn't going to teach. The pestilential stench of Guinea's ship, the seasoning in the European colonies, or the lash and lust of brutal and unrelenting overseer, I did not long remain after my sister. I was again sold and carried through a number of places, till after traveling a considerable time, I came to a town called Timnah, in the most beautiful country I had yet seen in Africa. It was extremely rich. And did y'all know that a lot of the names that the kingdom of Judah named those places, the slave master renamed it? Just like they renamed you. Hard for you to find your way back home, ain't it? It was extremely rich. There were many to the settlement that your ancestors set up. It'll be hard for you to find that name after they done erased it. And if you have people with a revisionist mindset in these countries where you scattered at, they're going to make it even harder for you to even want to find it, because they will tire you. They will make you tired. They will weary you. It was extremely rich. Like what they say, they want to erase all the history and revitalize it and write it because they don't want the children's feelings to be hurt, for the truth to be brought out, which flowed through it and supplied a large pond in the center of the town. So there's a large pond in the center of this town, wherever this town is, where the people wash. Here I saw for the first time coconuts. So in this town, it was coconuts there, which I thought superior to peanuts I had ever tasted before. And the trees, which were loaded, were all interpressed among the houses, which had commodious shades adjoining, and were in the same manner as ours, and in cities being nearly plastered and whitewashed. And insides, my bad, being nearly plastered and whitewashed. Here I also saw and tasted for the first time sugar cane. Cane. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hold on, family. Let me go and check my door. I'll be right back. Sugar cane. I'll be right back. Let me go check my door. All right, I'm back. They was doing a lot of noise and talking and stuff out there. And I had to go and check to see what was going on. All right, so we stopped at sugar cane. So all right. So threw it in a large pond. Coconuts, which I thought superior to peanuts, and I had ever tasted before, and the trees, which were loaded, were all interpierced among the houses, which had commodity shades adjoining and were in the same manner as ours. The insides being neatly plastered and whitewashed. Here I also saw and tasted for the first time sugar cane. Their money consisted of little white shells, the size of the fingernail. I was sold here for 172 of them. This elder was sold for 102 seashells. And I believe that's those little shells that curl in, because I remember we used to play with those a lot when I was little in Florida. But then again, I might not be telling, but hey, it is what it is. It might not be the exact shell, but by a merchant who lived and bought and brought me there. So a merchant who lived there and brought him there. Do y'all remember the kingdom of Judah had left and went to another place where they established themselves, and they called it Oyo? That's where they reestablished. They had different towns where when they leave a place, they had different places where they reestablished themselves at. So here it show you that the slave master I was sold here for 172 of them by a merchant who lived and brought me there. So this is another wave, see? I had been about 2 or 3 days at his house when a wealthy widow, a neighbor of his, came there one evening and brought with her an only son, a young gentleman about my own age and size. Here they saw me, and having taken a fancy to me, I was bought of the merchant and went home with them. Her house and premises were situated close to one of those revellets I have mentioned, and were finest I've ever saw in Africa. They were very extensive, and she had a number of slaves to attend her. The next day, I was washed and perfumed when mealtime came. So they washed him and they put cologne on him when mealtime came. So they had to make sure they had to bathe before they eat their food. You remember when grandma and them say, all right, y'all done came in from playing, go in there and take care, go and wash yourself. Or if we had already bathed that day, and she said, okay, y'all just been outside, wash your feet, wash yourself up, and come on in here and eat. I was led into the presence of my mistress and ate and drank before her. See, look, they had multiple wives over there. You see this? So it wasn't just he was married to one woman, but you notice that a brother wasn't married to the same woman that another brother was married to, and ate and drank before her with her son. This filled me with astonishment, and I could sacrifice, and I could scarce help expressing my surprise that the young gentleman should suffer me, who was bound, to eat with him who was free. So why was he shocked about this? Their houses looked like their houses. Why did she buy him? Was she trying to redeem him? What was going on? And not only so, did she buy him because, so let's read this and see, but that he would not at any time either eat or drink till I had taken first. So they wouldn't eat or drink. So the boy wouldn't eat or drink until he ate and drank first. Why is this? Because I was the eldest. Wait a minute. So he respected him because he was the oldest? This don't sound like no slave master here. Which was agreeable to our custom. So wait a minute. The older ate first. So why did daddy and mama and them get their plate first and the children got theirs last? So why did daddy and mama and them and your aunties and uncle and them and the oldest of the children had to come in? I remember at my grandmama's house, we all had to come in by age. So my granddaddy and them got their plate first. Then my mama and my aunties and them got their plates. And then the oldest of my uncles and them, they got their plate. My Uncle Derek got his plate. My Uncle Leon got his plate. And then, all the way from the oldest, Deborah got her plate. She been at her plate. But anyway, we're going to keep on going. Because I was the eldest, which was agreeable to our custom. And that happened all across Haines City. All across Haines City. The older always get their plate first. All across where we grew up, everybody that's older got their plate first, no matter where we went. No matter if we went to Georgia, no matter if we went to Alabama, everybody ate first. Everybody ate first. That was older. It was a custom. Go to any church and you will see it as the Negro custom for the pastor, the elders, your aunties and them, they got to get their plate first. And the children got their plate last. And we didn't eat with the adults. But anyway, indeed, everything here, this is your custom. Everything here and all their treatment of me made me forget that I was a slave. Why? Because that was home. The language of these people resembled ours so nearly that we understood each other perfectly. So just they had a distance away from each other. Yoruba, Igbo, different languages, they similar. We understood each other's language. It resembled ours so nearly, we understood each other perfectly. Now, why did they say we don't know what each other's saying? They had also the very same custom. You got Negroes that stay in LA and Negroes that stay in Texas. But when they talk to each other, they understand what they're saying because how we speak is so similar. And look, language of these people resembled ours so nearly that we understood each other perfectly. They had also the very same customs as we. There were likewise slaves daily to attend us. Just like they had service over there at their mama and daddy house, they had service over there. You had people that's, you got the ushers that serve people when they come inside the church house. You had the people in the house that was Their job was to serve. When somebody come to your house, you serve them. You take on the job as a servant, as a slave. When you at somebody's house, they might pick you and say, hey, do this here. And if you don't do what they say, you disobey them, they're going to tell grandma. Anyway, let me keep on reading. While my young master, and it wasn't like the slave master where they take a whip and beat you all across the head and slam you inside of a ditch and sail you off down the river. This not what this is, family. While my young master and I, with other boys, supported with our darts and bows and arrows, so they let them play with bows and arrows. They weren't afraid that this boy was going to shoot them with the arrow. And wait a minute, they had bows and arrows? So they wasn't, so you mean to tell me they wasn't holding no banana? They weren't holding no banana and scratching themselves in the tree with a stick. You telling me that these children had bows and arrows? With other boys, with other boys, sported with our darts and bows and arrows, as I had been used to do at home. So how did the Seminoles know how to shoot bows and arrows? Did the slave master teach them how to shoot bows and arrows? Think about it. And this resemblance to my former happy state. See, it was a state, a former happy state. I passed about 2 months. So he said state, and notice that he said nation, and then he said state. And you know he meant tribe, because that's what nation means. I passed about 2 months, and I now began to think I was to be adopted into the family. So he understood how it happened when you finna be adopted into the family, right? And was beginning to reconcile to my situation. So he was beginning to relax to his situation and to forget my disgrace, my misfortunes. So they treated him so well that he wanted to forget. He almost forgot his disgrace and misfortunes when all at once the delusion vanished. For with the least previous knowledge, one morning early, while my dear master and companion was still asleep, he loved them, I was awakened out of my reverie to refresh sorrow, and hurried away even amongst the uncircumcised. Wait a minute here. Hurried away even amongst the uncircumcised? So wait a minute here. Uncircumcised? Who is this? Kingdom of Judah? And hurried away even amongst the uncircumcised. Thus, at the very moment I dreamed of the greatest happiness, I found myself most miserable. And it seemed as if fortune wished to give me this taste of joy, only to render the reverse more poignant. To change I now experienced was as painful as it was sudden and unexpected. I was changed indeed from a state of bliss to a scene which inexpressibly by me, as it is discovered to me, an element I had never before beheld. Until then, I had no idea of, and wherein such instances of hardship and cruelty continually occurred, as I can never reflect on but with horror. All the nations and people I had hitherto passed through, resembled our own in their manners. This is the west coast of Africa here. This is the kingdom of Judah here. And inside of the kingdom of Judah, it was a lot of slave catchers. It was a lot of slave catching tribes in there. But in the kingdom of Judah, that was the target. But I came at length to a country, the inhabitants of which differ from us in all those particulars. So look at this. I was very much struck with this difference, especially when I came among a people who did not circumcise. Wait a minute. Luiz-Jorge-Artista said he was struck. Look, he said, especially when I was he said I was struck with this difference, especially when I came among a people who did not circumcise and ate without washing their hands. Who he sound like? And ate without wash hands? Did Messiah rebuke our ancestors about this? That by their own laws with washing hands and stuff, they rebuked, they got mad at the apostles and them because they were eating with unwashed hands? They cook also in iron pots and had European cutlasses and crossbows. So it was a difference between a European crossbow and the kingdom of Judah crossbow. They cook also in iron pots and had European cutlasses and crossbows, which were unknown to us, and fought with their fists among themselves. So he seen them fighting with their fists among themselves. Their women were not so modest as ours. The women was uncovered, for they ate and drank and slept with their men. So they ate, drank, and slept with their men. But above all, I was amazed to see no sacrifices or offerings among them. So they weren't sacrificing no lambs, sheep, bulls, and goat among them, family. Who is this right here? But above all, I was amazed to see no sacrifices or offering among them. In some of those places, the people ornamentally themselves with scars. So they were scarring themselves for the dead. Something that the prophets commanded that they do not do. And ate and drank and slept with their men. But above all, I was amazed to see no sacrifices or offering among them. In some of those places, the people ornamented themselves with scars and likewise filled their teeth very sharp. So they sharpened their teeth. What tribe was this that sharpened their teeth? There's a tribe that sharpened their teeth. Luiz-Jorge-Artista said that tribe does not have the same practices as the people who were born to be slaves in Africa. The Yoruba, the kingdom of Judah, the Igbo and them, they wasn't of the same. Those people that was sharpening their teeth and all that, that wasn't the same tribe. But now they put it all together and say, you look, everybody the same, everybody the one. The Limba, the Vimba, everybody the same tribe. They wanted sometimes to ornament me in the same manner. So he said they wanted sometimes to ornament me in the same manner. But I would not suffer them. And why did those people sharpen their teeth? That's another thing you need to look into. That's another thing to research. Why did they sharpen their teeth? There was a reason why they sharpened their teeth. Let me go over here and look that up for you real quick, because I'm almost done for my reading today. You gotta write it like this if you want to know. Everybody has their own fingerprint. My bad, I wrote it wrong. It was a rite of passage into adulthood. It was a sign of masculinity. It was a way of strengthening the spirit. Some tribes regarded it as a form of beauty. What tribes sharpen their teeth? African tribes that sharpen their teeth include this one, I don't know how to say that, the Congo rainforest, Makande people and ethnic group, Bimba of Zamba, Bimba of Zamba, Yao of Malawi and part of Zambia, Afar people who sharpen their front scissors. And who is the Afar people? So just because you're a Shemite don't mean that it wasn't some practices that happened, because the Afar people, you look inside your Bible, see the son of Yoktan, you'll see the Afar people, Apar. But anyway, let me finish reading this little bit and then I'm finna be done reading for the day. Y'all be willing? Okay. There we go. I was on this side. Okay. So all the nations and people had hitherto passed through resemble our own in their manners, customs, and language. But I came at length to a country, the inhabitants of which differed from us in all these particulars. I was very much struck with this difference, especially when I was came among a people who did not circumcise and ate without washing their hands. They cook also in iron pots and had European cutlasses and crossbows, which were unknown to us, and fought with their fists among themselves. Their women were not so modest as ours, for they ate and drank and slept with their men. But above all, I was amazed to see no sacrifices or and look, even in the church, they let I don't know if y'all remember this back in the day, for some churches, the women had their spot and the men had their spot. Now, it might be different now. You got a lot of our people doing stuff that their ancestors didn't do. But we're reading a first-hand account. In some of those places, the people ornamented themselves with scars and likewise filed their teeth very sharp. They wanted sometimes to ornament me in the same manner, but I would not suffer them, hoping that I might sometime be among a people. All right. So you'll see why a lot of our people took on a lot of these customs, who did not thus disfigure themselves as I thought they did. At last I came to the banks of a large river, which was covered, and I mean, it could have been a way to hide. At least I came to the banks of a large river, which was covered with canoes in which the people appeared to live with their household utensils. So what are these people doing on the river? Ola Uda Aquiano, and forgive me, y'all, I'm not supposed to pray to the and provisions of all kinds, and I was beyond measure astonished at this, as I had never before seen any water larger than a pond or a rivulet, and my surprise was mingled with no small fear when I was put into one of the canoes. So he was 12 years old. He had not been to the ocean yet. And we began to paddle and move along the river. We continued going on thus till night. Now look, they took him far away from his mommy and daddy. They kidnapped this baby. And when I came to land, so the first slave master was dressed like his people and everything, same houses and everything. But when his, I think his daughter had died, that's when he gave up on everything. And when he recovered, according to Wydah Aquino, when he recovered, that's when he sold the boy off. And I suppose that the wife wanted to buy him to be his son, to be their son or whatnot, to adopt him as a baby in the family or something, because and made fires on the banks, each family by themselves. Some dragged their canoes on the shores, others stayed and cooked in theirs and laid in them all night. Those on the land had mats of which they made tents, some in the shape of little houses, and these we slept. So he talking about the tent. And after the morning meal, we embarked again and proceeded as before. I was often very much astonished to see some of the women, as well as the men, jumped into the water, dived to the bottom, came up again and swim about. Ooh, I remember this African tribe, I think, that jumped down to the bottom of the water. Thus I continued to travel, sometimes by land, sometimes by water, through different countries and various nations, till at the end of a 6 or 7 month after I had been kidnapped. He knew what happened to him. He wasn't retarded. Like people treat our people like we dumb and don't know that we've been kidnapped over here. I arrived at the sea coast. It would be tedious and uninteresting to relate all the incidents which befell me during this journey, and which I have not yet forgotten, of the various hands I passed through, and the manner and customs of all the different people among whom I lived. I shall therefore only observe that in all the places where I was, the soil was exceedingly rich. So he's trying to tell you where he was. The pumpkins. They had pumpkins growing over there. I don't know what that is. Idas, planters, Wydah, I don't know, Wydah planters, plantains. They had plantains over there, fam. Yams. What did I thought that we ain't know nothing about that until we got to America. Plantains, yams. Whose diet is this? Plantains, yams. This sound like the Gullah Geechee diet to me. And I think he's saying and etc. and etc. were in great abundance and incredible size. There were also vast quantities of different gums, though not used for any purpose, and everywhere a great deal of tobacco. The cotton even grew quite wild, and there was a plenty of red wood. I saw no mechanics whatever in all the way, except such as I have mentioned. The chief employment in all the countries was agriculture. So there wasn't all no roads and cities and skyscrapers and all that, and covering up of this and that and the other. So it was like wild country. Was it some of the Central and South African tribes? Some ancestry worship and rites of passage. Plantations are in Africa, black soap, so it was definitely not exactly. Was it positive to say, was it some of the Central and South African tribes, some ancestry worship and rites of passage? Okay, Ola Uda said that they were traveling the left of the east, so they had to be traveling the opposite side of the east. So they were traveling west, sister, and his name is Ouda. So if his they, I think they was on the city before that, and you know they didn't ride in no cars. He wasn't riding in no car and stuff. They was he was going from different city to city, like state to state, and they was selling him backward and forward. That was about the teeth. The African, you talking about the African tribes that sharpen their teeth and that dive inside of the water? I think I heard about them. Wasn't it some of them in America too, wasn't it? That same tribe that dive in the water with their teeth, they sharpen like razors. And I think some of the slaves, some of the people was doing that in order to disguise themselves, so that the slave master would think that they was a slave catching cast. They didn't like how that looked. I saw no mechanics, whatever, in all the way, except such as I have mentioned, the chief employment in all these countries was agriculture, planting, agriculture, planting and farming and all these things like that. So when they brought us to America, they didn't teach us how to do none of that. We already knew how to do it. So when they saying that, okay, labor fees, no, they ain't teach us nothing. We already knew how to do it. Ola Uda Aquino, 12 years old, he knew how to do agriculture, planting. He was a smith. He had all these trades and all this, and they script him away from his parents. He learned it from his pop, from his daddy and them, that he already knew manners. They knew circumcision and all this stuff. They weren't trained. Didn't nobody beat him. No, he learned it. It was culture. And both the male and females, as with us, were brought up to it. So he just said it right here. He said they were taught it already. The slave master didn't have to train them and train in their arts of war. So they already knew how to fight. They didn't learn how to fight in the military by coming to America and learning how to fight with them. They already knew how to fight. They were trained from childbirth, trained to be warriors, because it was a rough time. The first object which saluted my eyes when I arrived on the coast was the sea and slave ship. Now he getting into what he saw. The sea, Yam, and the slave ship, which was then riding an anchor and waiting for its cargo. These filled me with astonishment, which was soon converted into terror. When I was carried on board, I was immediately handled. You know how they handle people when they throwing them in jail, and tossed up to see if I was sound, if I was crazy, by some of the crew. And I was now persuaded that I had gotten into a world of bad spirits, and that they were going to kill me. Their complexions to differ so much from ours. Their long hair, look, their complexions too differ so much. So he said how they look also differs so much from theirs, very much from theirs. Their long hair, he examining these people. True, I went to Whitney Plantation in Louisiana, and they had to build their own cabins. They already know how to build them with ventilation and heat. Exactly, sister. My granddaddy built grandmama's house from scratch, from ground up. He didn't get no help from them come over there. No, he built it up from ground up. And when the house burnt down, the city seized the land. So he's explaining how these people look. That was the ones on the ship. Their complexions. So Ola Uda saw color. 2, differing so much from ours. Their long hair and the language they spoke, which was very different from any I had ever heard. From any I have ever heard. United to confirm me in this belief, indeed, to a people of a language whom you know your fathers know not, look, which was very different from any I had ever heard. They looked at very different from them, with fierce different complexions from ours. Their long hair and the language they spoke, which was very different from ours. So they said, oh, y'all didn't go through that. Look, Olauda said the language was very different from ours. United to confirm me in this belief. Indeed, such were the horrors of my views and fears at the moment, that if 10,000 worlds had been my own, I would have freely parted with them all. Okay. All to have exchanged my condition with that of the meanest slave in my own country. So he said he would have rather traded with the meanest slave, exchanged my condition with that of the meanest slave in my own country. When I looked around the ship too. Something. What's that popping up on my screen? Oh yeah. Okay. I'm far back on the other screen. I'm looking in the past. All right. But I see what you're writing, fam. Let me exit out of here and get back in there so I can stay caught up on it. All right. There we go. I'm all caught up. And exchange my condition with that of the meanest slave in my own country. When I looked around the ship too, and saw a large furnace of copper boiling, so they knew their colors, of copper boilings, and a multitude of black people of every description chain, together, every one of their countenance expressing dejection and sorrow, and a multitude of black people of every description chain, light-skinned and dark-skinned, together, every one of their countenance expressing dejection and sorrow. I no longer doubted of my fate, and quite overpowered with horror and anguish, and look at where they took them. In anguish, I felt motionless on the deck and fainted. When I recovered a little, I found some black people about me, who I believe were some of those who had brought me on board. So the same people that was enchaining them, who he believed was some of those who brought him on board. And you go back up and you read this story, and you're going to see the same people who were selling them. Remember when we studied about the fund and about the kingdom of Judah, how the king had sent forth his officers to catch slaves and put them in chains? Black people. And I'm gonna have to go over and read that again, because somebody would give them the chance. So if y'all get the opportunity, go to the video when this is done. Random or specific. Random or specific. And read the history and match it up with Wydah Aquiliano is saying. And read about the Ottoman Empire. Don't let nobody get the chance on you. Who I believe were some of those who had brought me on board and had been receiving their pay. They talked to me in order to cheer me, but all in vain. I asked them, they spoke the same language, if we were not to be eaten by those white men with horrible look, with fierce looks. What did the prophet say? And what did Moses say? Of a fierce look, horrible looks, red faces, and long hair. They told me was not, and one of the crew brought me a small portion of spirituous liquor in a wine glass. What's this wine here? What they got this here liquor? Do you read about the Portuguese and them selling, trading them for wine? They had a lot of that. But being afraid of him, I would not take it out of his hand. One of the blacks, therefore, took it from him and gave it to me, and I took a little down my palate, which instead of reviving me, as they thought it would, threw me into the greatest consternation at the strange feeling it proceed, having never tasted any such liquor before. Soon after this, the blacks who brought me on board went off and left me abandoned to despair. Check this out. The blacks who brought me on board went off and left me abandoned to despair. I now saw myself deprived of all chances of returning to my native country. So these people who sold them, he thought that they was going to help him. They walked off. Even the least glimpse of hope of gaining the shore, which I now consider as friendly, and I even wish for my former slavery in preference to my present situation. So he said he was hoping for his present situation rather than what he was going through it then, which was fueled with horror of every kind, still heightened by my ignorance of what I was to undergo. I was not long suffered to indulge my grief. I was soon put down under the decks, and there I received such a salutation in my nostrils, as I had never experienced in my life, so that with loathsomeness of stench and crying together, and darkness and weeping and gnashing and crying together, I became so sick and low that I was not able to eat, nor had I the least desire to taste anything. I now wish for the last friend, death, to relieve me. But soon to my grief, 2 of the white men offered me eatables, and on my refusing to eat, one of them held me fast by the hands and laid me across. And I think the windlass and tied my feet. I don't know what that say. And I think the windlass and tied my feet while the other flogged me severely because he didn't want to eat. I had never experienced anything of this kind before. And although not being used to the water, I naturally feared that element the first time I saw it. Yet, nevertheless, could I have got over the kneadings, I would have jumped over the side. That's why a lot of our people, our ancestors of our tribe, the people of our tribe jumped over. But I could not. And besides, the crew used to watch us very closely, who were not chained down to the decks, lest we should leap into the water. And I have seen some of those poor African prisoners most severely cut for attempting to do so, and hourly whipped for not eating. This indeed was often the case with myself. All right, and I'm finna stop right here, fam. And if Yahweh willing, I will be back tomorrow. If Yahweh willing, I will be back tomorrow to read more on this book. I'm just gonna put it like this. There's something flying around my head. All right, fam. But make sure y'all go and check out that the one I did, specific or random. And when you go inside of that video, the book of Wydah Galley and all that'll be in there with the fun and all that, empire and all that. You can go and listen to that video, specific, random or specific, and under that video is all of the stuff, the study materials and everything. So y'all, if y'all haven't been reading it, y'all can go and download it and catch up on this. And I want to thank Yahweh for the people who provided the scenery. Y'all can go and check down underneath the description of the video. Thank y'all for making these beautiful sceneries that a lot of the family have been looking at. Y'all please go and follow those people. Their links are underneath the video. And make sure y'all show each other some kindness, some love. And as I leave out of here, I want to say to you all, please make sure you take your shoes as you respectfully came in. Your shoes is washed, your socks and everything is neatly put on the side of the wall. All you got to do is go and put on your shoes, slip on your shoes, and you can take your to-go plate. And thank you for wiping your feet before you came inside the door. Shalom to the family. Blessings on you. Until next time, Yah bless you.